This is a good opportunity to go to that clip of Jack Del Rio. Um, so Jack Del Rio, former head coach of the then Oakland Raiders, but now Washington Commanders defensive coordinator, has been like ultra MAGA for quite a while, publicly so. He made this statement yesterday that he had to walk back because the Washington Commanders play in Virginia. And the people were like, "Oh, well, you want a new stadium? We're not. You can't speak this way about January 6th." And he like apologized, but it's just so hollow. Here he is, and here are his comments about January 6th being, quote, just a dust up.
You want to talk about it? I'd talk about it with anybody. Yeah, no problem. At any time. But they're not. I'm just expressing myself. And I think we all as Americans have the right to express ourselves, especially if you're being respectful. I'm being respectful. I just asked a simple question. Really, let's get right down to it. What did I ask? A simple question. Why are we not looking into those things? If we're going to talk about it, why are we not looking into those things? Because it's kind of hard for me to say I can realistically look at it. I see the images on TV. People's livelihoods are being destroyed. Businesses are being burned down. No problem. And then we have a dust up at the Capitol. Well, there's nothing burned down. And we're not going to talk about it. We're going to make that a major deal. I just think it's kind of two standards. And if we apply the same standard and we're going to be reasonable with each other, let's have a discussion. That's all it was. Let's have a discussion. We're Americans. Let's talk it through. I'm for us, having a great opportunity to have a fulfilled life. Like I said, every which way I can. When I'm here, it's about love and respect.
So so he had to apologize for that. Unsurprisingly, he was also against players protesting during the national anthem. I know that might come as a shock for people. But why? Well, one, it's not shocking to me that Jack Del Rio is employed by the Washington Commanders, formerly the Washington Racial Slurs, owned by Dan Snyder, Trump backer, notoriously one of the worst owners in professional sports in terms of both the outcomes of the team since he took over and also the workplace that he has presided over, which has come under fire and is currently under congressional investigation for mass sexual misconduct in a cover-up. So that's his defensive coordinator, which shouldn't shock you. But there's a lot more guys like this in the NFL than I think people want to actually grapple with. Or me, it makes me uncomfortable. Standard conservative. And players need more rights, particularly in the NFL, and they don't have the same, every contract in the NBA is fully guaranteed. People don't realize when they see flowery numbers for contracts in the NFL, a lot of it's not guaranteed for injury. Other things, say you test positive for marijuana, you could get cut instantly. It's precarious because this is a culture within the NFL that needs to get weeded out. There are these white coaches who, and it's way worse in college football because they don't pay their players. They just treat them like, servants essentially. They are old, conservative, I'll go farther where they sometimes, or maybe I shouldn't say that. They want to boss around black players and they enjoy doing it. And Jack Del Rio is that kind of guy.
I was going to say, it's just interesting. You can tell by the way he characterized I would assume he was referring to like the various BLM protests that sprung up in the wake of the killing of George Floyd and the multiple other killings that occurred over the past, by the police of unarmed black people over the past 2 years. But you can tell by the way he described it that he was probably like aggrieved by the fact that more people weren't like having their heads cracked open by the police during those protests. Like he seems that like that seems to be his primary grievance with it, that he feels like the people at the Capitol were treated harsher than the people in the streets for BLM protests, even despite the fact that that time was characterized by video after video from around like all of America of cops like beating protesters, pushing down old people, gassing moms and nuns while they formed like an anti-violence line, all of that stuff you presume that he saw. But he thinks it wasn't harsh enough. A few people caught some indictments for storming the Capitol, in which are like, the cops who they love, one cop who they proclaim to love police got killed, and he feels like there should be no criminal or like legal or even social repercussions for that. And I think that really does speak to the underlying mentality that people are afraid to like point out about, a lot of people's relationship with the police in this country, that it's for other people. It's for brown people, it's for people who are protesting against like the police state, it's for, poor people like Occupy Wall Street to be cracked down, and any amount of policing is too much for me to be subject to. And that's what a lot of the January 6th grievance is actually. Like any amount of policing I'm subject to is government overreach, because the police don't exist for this region. And sometimes I think, people are way too generous with treating that kind of viewpoint from Republicans as though it's, a sign that they kind of get it about police brutality. But, it's just like bigotry. Yeah. Like thinking that you deserve special rights, especially from the state because of some inherent quality is like, it's bigotry. And that's what it needs to be called out as, especially in situations where they're trying to appeal to some like greater need for like civil rights or, police treatment of civilians. That's not what they're actually calling for.
Yeah. Maybe he should stick to sports. I don't know.
This revision we're seeing about what happened the summer after George Floyd was killed is like the main gospel of right wingers right now, that the cops did not put them down. It was all just looting and property damage to beat the band, and the cops were just not doing anything. And we all know that wasn't true. We all know that the cops were instigating that stuff to beat the band, lying about it. And also, just to back up a little bit, January 6th was a violent protest to overturn a democratic election. George Floyd protests were protests against police killing. And those are different things. So if you want to really talk about it, Jack Del Rio, if you want to just engage in free speech, the one that you want to be treated easier is the one that they're trying to overturn a democratic election. And like, I don't know how many fucking like football plays you got to learn, but if you actually think that election was stolen, you're a big time idiot, and that's a liability for your team, and I think you should be fired.
And I really feel for particularly black players in those rooms, and like just giving you, there are many more Jack Del Rios on coaching staffs, particularly in the NFL.
And they should be hunted.
They should be rooted out.
Rooted out of the league, exactly.
If you're going to be, that's a league that's 70% black. There's no place for that kind of perspective there, frankly. But because teams are owned by capitalists, and because Dan Snyder is very ideologically aligned with that guy, Del Rio, I doubt that Del Rio will get fired based on the fact it might be with a different owner, but not with that owner.
And if he gets fired, he will be hired somewhere else.
100%.
And I'm just saying, like, I don't have, like, the problem for me, like the whole like cancel culture and people getting fired. That's a problem to me for like normal workers.
Yeah.
At high level positions like this, that does not apply to me. I am not about elite people.
He makes millions.
Yeah, I'm not about protecting elite people from accountability and criticism in the name of not being woke.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think that that's just at some point the whole cancel thing is people like railing against changing norms. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of those people are perfectly fine with, people losing their job for a lot less than like everyone not liking you, like, a rich person complaining about your service or some, shit like that. And so the idea that we should just all be subject, like, rather that the Constitution serves to protect people's rights to just be like an asshole at their job or like in public and have no one be like, hey, can you just like leave, is, it just shows where their minds are at. Like they're just like a very antisocial and I'd say like anti-fun group. Like the idea that their idea of like, having a good time is coming to a party and being the asshole, and like everyone else being forced to just like deal with them and not just like ask them to leave.
Exactly.